All right, so we are recording now.
Mhm.
So we are in finishing up week 4, which is the preparatory sections. Um, some have, I think I've had 3 or 4 from 5, I don't know, emails going. I'm having trouble with this frequency equal 4 thing, and it's there. It's the checklist kind of hopefully explains it a little better, but it's a stat language. You've got to start learning and thinking in statistics mode because, as I said, I can't tell you unless I give you the answer. I mean, that's how. So, but it's there. So just understand that. And there's another one, I think, right before that, independent or something like that. But it's all starting to get into the stat language that you're going to have to start utilizing because that's what we're going to be using in the next, well, actually all the way through week 9 now. I want to, excuse me, reiterate that I had a couple of handwritten assignments. They don't go, okay? So you're going to have to learn how to do some of these things. As I mentioned at the beginning of the course, handwritten assignments are not acceptable. You can't use handwritten assignments on your proposal. You can't use handwritten anything for graphs or anything of that nature. So you're going to have to learn how to do the statistical graphs, statistical symbols, and so forth and so on, okay? Along with the calculation, because it will come right back at you and it will go into a redo assignment mode grade, okay? So please, you're going to have to learn how to make the greater than, less than. You're going to have to learn how to make the different symbols as we get into week number 6. So let me go into what's upcoming. Week number 5, that starts the understanding phase, which is the probability. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the preview announcement, probability is one of those least loved topics in statistics because it has a tendency to rattle your brain with the different types of laws, the additive law, the multiplicative law, and so forth that you have to do. And certain terminologies like and or is what you're going to have to do. So if you're not talking, if you would, mute your mic all the way down because I'm hearing a lot of background noise. So please mute yourselves on there, especially if you're on camera. Just go down to, I think it's the lower left, at least on mine, it says mute, and please do that. So kind of eliminate some of the background information. And then when we go for questions, you can unmute your mic on that. So, but the probability, as I mentioned in the preview announcement, if and the curriculum department has not uploaded my new assignment yet. So the template is actually the assignment that will be uploaded future. So please use that. Okay. And there's 2 reasons for it. One is that the original assignment only had 7 questions. So there were 14 points a hit, a little over 14 points a hit. So if you missed 1, it was an automatic B. If you missed 2, you had C. If you missed 3, you got a D, and so forth. You know, do the math. 3 times 14 is 52. So, so it gets pretty cumbersome. So I added, the second part was I added a question on there, which is extremely similar to one on the final. Okay. And so it gives a total of 10 questions, so 10 points a hit. So this is number 1. It's a lesson on focus. And I use that term a lot. Make sure you focus on what you're doing. The second is it's a lesson on, guys, if I don't do well, what's going to happen type thing. Because there are people that may get a 70 or 60 on this assignment, and you have to learn how to adjust and handle the situation, move forward. One assignment is not going to break your grade or anything. There are plenty of things up there. You had the first 4 weeks to build points. You still have your discussions. You've got your last PowerPoint to do all that. Usually week 9, people tear that assignment up, okay? So I looked at the grades, and there's a lot of really, really good grades. So, I mean, everybody's kind of positioning themselves well, which is pretty much par for, the class over the years. So you're in the same position as everybody else now. It's a measure of understanding of what stats is about. There's more emphasis now on following directions. Okay. Do not just kind of go off on a tangent, do what you want. That's not how the structure is. It's not going to be the same when you go into your proposal. You're just not going to just write something and have it turned in. Like I say, I'm a DRR reviewer, so at some point in time over the next few years, I may be looking at your proposal that you're going to submit, and that's after the approval of your chair and the committee, and then it goes to the DRR to review to make sure, in my case, all the stats chapters, I review chapter 1 and chapter 3 to make sure the stats are appropriate and people know what they're talking about. And I've sent a few back last week that said, you're gonna have to review the stats. They're using the wrong statistic on a pre-test, post-test, and you're gonna have to go back and review that and then rewrite chapter 3 because it's just not gonna fly. So these are the things that you're gonna have to start looking at as far as on a quantitative side. On a qualitative side, you're going to have to make sure you have the triangulation, which is you're gathering data on 3 different fronts. That your survey, if you're going to do a research design survey, you're going to have to put in there that you're going to have to pilot test it because in research, you just don't make up anything. You have to have verification. And as you see, as you get into your proposal phase, there's Chapter 3 is a methodology, and you're going to have in there reliability and validity sections on the instrumentation. So you just don't design your own questionnaire, you just don't design your own survey and run it. So if you're going to do it, that's fine, but you have to run a pilot study or a pilot group to all agree that these questions measure what they're supposed to measure, which gives you the content validity.
Can I ask a question?
So it's all starting to understand how the statistical processes work from this point on. Okay, so you've had your kind of a review, fun, not so blow your mind 4 weeks, even though some go, oh my gosh, but now we're getting into the stat part of it. And so the understanding is week 5, 6, and 7, and the application is weeks 8 and 9. Okay, so week 5, it's like I say, it's the probability phase. It tells you exactly what you need to do in the template. It tells you exactly what you need to do and what not to do in the preview announcement. Okay, so it tells you to round to 2 decimal points where it tells you round to 4. Well, rounding rules are in effect, and it tells you to round to 4 decimal points at a couple points in the template. It's there for a purpose. Okay, I don't do these things just to make students, climb the walls or anything. They're there for a purpose, to understand, follow directions. You have to be able to do that and understand it from what the committee tells you and what the DRR tells you when your proposal comes back. So, I say the probability section. This is going to require the next few weeks, a little more time maybe than what you spent prior, because it is an understanding. You're moving from the preparatory phase into the actual understanding and using statistical jargons, if you want to go that route. But yeah, we're going to start using more statistical terminology as we go through. So probability is week 5. You may have to review, and look at videos. Print out the actual chapter from the ACE library on probability. Kind of look through it. Maybe that will explain it a little better than are a little more in detail than the PowerPoints. But this is I say stats is not an accurate science, but it's very precise. What I mean by that, precise means that there are certain steps and procedures that you have to follow. Okay. Accurate, yeah, because you're rounding and you're doing some things here, and there may be some data gathering situations. It's not as accurate as you want. That's why you have a 0.05 alpha level, and that won't mean anything to you right now until we get into chapter 6 or chapter 7. Alpha level usually defaults to 0.05, which means that 5% of the time the researcher has chosen that 0.05 to basically commit a type 1 error. And that won't mean anything to you until you get in chapter 7 either. But it's in right now, pre-stat terms, pre-chapter 7, it's 5% of the time I may make a wrong decision, okay? Based on something that might happen, I may make a wrong conclusion, come to a wrong conclusion. And that's what the alpha level is. That's why, as you'll understand, research never proves anything. It either supports or fails to support your premise, your hypothesis. It doesn't prove anything. So when you see an ad on there, our clinical studies prove, no, it don't. It just supports or fails to support. Okay? The only way it'll prove is if it does the same thing for 100 years. And then maybe you might get close to saying, well, this proves. Okay? So, and so when you get to that section, they'll explain it a whole lot easier. But this is the type of statistical language that we're going to start using. When we get in chapter 6, we're going to go into a thing called transformation of scores. So if you remember, we calculated a raw score minus the mean and came up with a Z statistic. Remember that? Yes, no, puppy dog head? Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense, doesn't it? So you had the raw score minus the mean divided by the standard deviation, gave you a Z statistic. It actually transformed it into a standard normal distribution. All right, so now in chapter 7, or 6 rather, we're going to get into a Z score. And a Z score is you take a mean, the sample mean, subtract the population mean from it, and divide it by the standard error of the mean, which are real funky calculations. But what that does is allows you an opportunity to make a better choice of statistical applications, because we're going to be using that formula in chapter 8. Okay. So, but the main point on chapter 7 is the transformation of scores. So once you come up with a Z score, we're going to transform that into a T score. And businesses uses T-scores because it takes away the negative numbers under the standard normal distribution. So if you recall, in a standard normal distribution, the range is from -3 to +3. Okay, ring a bell? Yes, no, puppy dog head? Yeah. Well, in a T distribution, the range is from 20 to 80, with 20 being equivalent to -3 and 80 being equivalent to +3. Businesses use that because it takes away the negative numbers, okay? Then we're going to take that same Z-score and we're going to transform it into a Stanine score. Educators, you know that. Yes, no, puppy dog head? Yeah, Stanine score has a range from 1 to 9, correct? Yeah. All right. And so in that chapter, it'll show you how once you calculate the Stanine score, you can go back to the Z table and you can determine how many people scored above that and how many people scored below that. And so it helps you in your explanation with students who may score a Z score of 2. You look on the table, well, 75% did better than Johnny, and, but Johnny did better than 25%. So it helps you explain a little bit better, because being a former principal and superintendent, most of the faculty, when parents came in, we're told to, just tell them that 1, 2, and 3 is below average, 4, 5, and 6 is average, and 7, 8, 9 is above average, which tells you squat, okay? Other than they're either below average, average, or above average. And so Actually, it's less than squat. So by paying attention to this and the transformation, you're going to actually be able to go to a table and explain what a Stanine score of 8 really means, okay? Because when you transform and get a z-score, that's actually a spot on the standard normal distribution, okay? And then when you transform it from a z-score to a t-score, you're going to have a different number, but it's not going to alter its position on the standard normal distribution. And when you transfer the z-score into a Stanine score, you're going to have a different score, but it's not going to alter its position on the standard normal distribution. Make sense? Of course it doesn't, because you're not there yet. But the rule is transformation of scores does not alter its position on the standard normal distribution. So regardless, once I have the z-score, whatever I transform it using a specific formula, it's still going, if a z-score is at two standard deviations, if I transform it to a t-score, it's going to be a 70, which is 2 standard deviations. And if I transform it to a Stanine, it's going to be 8.5, I think, which is which is 9, I think, something like that. But it's not going to alter its position. It's still going to be 2 standard deviations. So however you transform it, it's going to be the same position on the standard normal distribution. And that's chapter 6 coming up. Now, I put together a formula on the Excel template. Once you do that formula, I can just tell you, you can just drag. I mean, you're going to have to, once you have the z-score on that, you can just drag it down, okay? And it's going to calculate the z-score for you. Because all you have to do is calculate, it's going to give you the mean and a standard deviation to use when you calculate the z, okay? Okay. And so you don't calculate anything as far as the mean and standard deviation, because if I do, I'm going to have 47 different means. I'm going to have 47 different standard deviations. So the mean and standard deviation is given to you, and that's what you use. It's reinforced in the preview announcement. It's also reinforced on the check sheet. Okay. The other thing is I do the first z-score and the first transformation to a t-score. Now, if you don't get those numbers, then you didn't set your Excel correctly, or something is not right, okay? So that's your focus, is if I don't get a z-score of this, and when I transform it, it doesn't equal that, then the Stanine is going to be off as well. And if you use that same process where they're all off, you're going to have all of them being off a little bit. And usually what happens is the directions will tell you, treat the z-score as a final answer. So when you have a final answer, where do you round it? Where do you round all final answers? 2 decimal points. So you won't, if it's 43.65, 111,698, you don't put all that. You put 43.69, okay? Because if you use all those other numbers, it's going to mess up the transformation for the T and the Z. That's why I gave you the first 2, okay? All right, the other component of this is do not round Stanine scores to a whole number, okay? I'm going to tell you on the Z, because if somebody asks me, do I round them, I'm going to say, go back to the Zoom, go back to the preview announcement, because it tells you, do not round Stanine scores to a whole number. Because I know in the education realm, what the administration tells you is that parents are not going to understand what a Stanine score of a 2.4 is. So just call it 2. Not in stats, okay? Not in statistics, because if a Stanine score is 2.45 and you round to 2, it now alters its position on the standard normal distribution, okay? You have to keep the rounding up there to maintain that level of not altering its position on the standard normal distribution. So I'll reiterate that. Do not round Stanine scores to whole numbers. And inevitably, I will get a handful or more that will round them to 1. Either they didn't listen to this or they're not reading the preview announcement. And they become not fully wrong, but they become a lot wrong, okay? Because that's not what we're looking for. We're not looking for the educational explanation to parents. We're looking for statistical applications that justify the use of the formulas, so they're not altered on the standard normal distribution. So do not round Stanine scores to whole numbers. Do not round any of them to tenths. They're rounded to 2 decimal places, okay? So that's your double check. Do not, look at number 1, the Z-score, and the T-score, the first 2 I give you. And if you don't get those in your formula, then something is wrong in your Excel program, or you're not using the correct formula if you're doing it by hand, okay? The second is do not round the Stanine scores to whole numbers. They are to be rounded to 2 decimal points. And the third is do not round anything to tenths. Everything is rounded to 2 decimal points, okay? Are we good with that?
Yes.
Oh, dark in here. I can't see what my notes are. All right. Then week number 7. We're going into actual writing of the hypothesis. Now, this one, for whatever reason, people believe I'm trying to trick them. And it's not. It's a real simple assignment. Really, truly is. There's no trickery involved. I've given the data to use. You're going to write a null and an alternative hypothesis for a one-tail test and a two-tail test, okay? So you're going to have 5 for a one-tail test and 5 for a two-tail test. Then you're going to have to compute the sample size using a chart, one of your tables, given the numbers that are there, using the alpha level, the effect size, and the power level, which not going to make any sense to you now, but when we get there. So please, at this point, read the preview announcements in detail. Don't skim through them because that's where you get in trouble. People miss some important information of what not to do, and they wind up doing it, okay? Read the checklist as it comes through to make sure that you've done what the preview announcement said to do, okay? That's why I provide those as here's what you need to do, make sure you do them, and the checklist is to go back and review to make sure I did them before I post it. And again, I don't grade any of the posts until Monday because people have a change of heart, or all of a sudden they go to bed and they go, oh my gosh, it clicked, and they go back and repost it. And that's fine. That's why I don't grade anything until Monday on the posts. But it's not a trick assignment. The biggest thing that occurs is the reversal of the symbols in a hypothesis test. Because in a two-tail test, you don't care where the difference is. I don't care whether, if one's larger or smaller, taller or skinnier, or, shorter or whatever. I don't care where the difference is. That's why it's called a two-tailed test. And that's equal or not equal. So the null hypothesis will equal whatever it is, and the alternative will not equal whatever it is, okay? Then you go to a one-tailed test. And a one-tailed test is, now I do care about the difference, because I may say that the test scores, 5th grade math test scores for girls are significantly higher than 5th grade math scores for boys. Now it's a direction, okay? So I'm now saying that the girls are going to score higher than the boys on the 5th grade math test score. Now it's not equal, not equal. The direction of the arrow follows the alternative hypothesis. So if I'm saying that the fifth grade girls, the fifth grade math scores for girls are going to be significantly higher, that goes with the alternative hypothesis. So that's H sub A, because the null hypothesis is always, 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 and never changes, is equal. So H sub O is always equal. So when you get to a one-tailed test and I say greater than, it goes to the alternative hypothesis. So the null is going to read H sub O equal whatever it is, and the null and the alternative is going to be H sub A is greater than whatever it is, okay? Then you're going to have to go back to the null and change the equal to less than or equal to cover all mathematical possibilities, okay? That'll make more sense, hopefully, when you get to chapter 7. Everybody shaking their head going, oh my God, look at the statistical terminology. Yes, it is. It's fun. So hopefully you'll start salivating at the end, you know, that you just got more, not drooling, just salivating, you know, just like. So that's what we're getting into right now. So all of this stuff will start because it's all a prelude now, but I want to give you why the understanding is important on chapters 5, 6, and 7, because we are now getting into the statistical understanding of the terminology. We're going to use it. So you're going to have to learn how to make a greater than, less than, equal to, equal, not equal. You're going to have to learn those things. You go under Word, you go under symbols, you'll find them and just insert them in there, because handwritten things, H sub O, and you write in equals, that's not going to fly, okay? Because you're not going to be able to do that on your proposal. So that's the upcoming portions of what it is. And then I'll have a third Zoom conference at the end of week 7 to prepare you for week 8 and 9. And then I'll have one more at week 9 to prepare you for the benchmark and final. Okay. But that's where we're headed. This is actually, that's why I call it the understanding. This is where you're going to have to focus, think, get in your stat groups, talk, discuss, whatever it is, and don't just agree. You know, someone says this is the way it's done. You know, hey, because if that's the way it's done incorrectly, then all of you are going to get it incorrectly or incorrect on the answer. So talk it through. There's no extra points for speed on this. You don't get any extra points for posting on Saturday or Friday than you do on Sunday at midnight. Okay. So this is the think through process for understanding, and understand the terminologies that go along with it. So those are the important things of reading the preview announcement. Use the template. And if you can't download the template, have somebody download it for you and send it, and then copy it exactly on some document, okay? Because it's critical that you use what's provided for you to keep you on track. And I've had people turn in stuff, they go, I can't find the Z-score. Well, it's on page 18. No, that's I don't want to go to page 18, because then I find half the Z-scores on 18, half of them on 19, and I may not have the entire Z-score. Please use the template. It'll keep you focused on what needs to be done on those. Let's see. Oh, on week number 6 in the Z and T's, one of the checks you can use that's very helpful, I don't trust technology a whole lot, okay? And I can tell you why. I went to a gas station and I got $20 worth of gas. I put in my card, came back, I looked on my bank statement, it hit it twice. Now, it's just going to cost me time. So I'm not even going to go there anymore. I mean, I'll go there, but I'm just going to, take $20 with me and give them cash. I'm tired of the, messing around with technology. So when it comes time to do the formula for the Excel spreadsheet. You're doing the z-score and the transformation to T and the steinine. I randomly select a few of them, and I use the formula for transformation. Okay, so once I have the z-score, because the z-score is critical, once I have that, then the formula for the t-score is 10 times that z plus 50. And so I'll do that formula just to see if what I have in that blank matches what the computer Excel told me that I had. The z-score formula for this, or the steinine transformation formula, is 2 times the z plus 5. So whatever the z-score is, so let's say the z-score is 2, so it's 2 times 2, which is 4, plus 5, which is 9. That's what I should have as a steinine transformation. Okay? Let's say the steinine is 2. Again, now I'm going to transform it to a t-score. So it's 10 times the z plus 50. So 10 times 2 is 20, plus 50 is 70. So I should have a 70 in that blank for the t-score transformation. 70 would equal 2 standard deviations above the mean on the standard normal distribution. So that would be my check and balance. I would do a few of those, and I feel comfortable that, you know, when I drag the formula down, it would, and you're gonna have to build the formula. I mean, so you can put in a formula on the t-score, 10 times the z plus whatever, how you do the Excel formula, and once you have one, you know, take it all the way down, and same thing with the z. But that's my suggestion, is that I would not trust the Excel formula, because sometimes it may, for whatever reason, knock itself out of a 2 decimal point. It may use all the z-score numbers instead of the 2, rounding parts. So that's what I would look at. And also look at the range of the score. You know that a steinine is between 1 and 9. So if I get a steinine of -4, there's something wrong there. If I get a steinine of 28, there's something wrong there. Okay, so yeah, that's what I say about focus. You just don't throw things in there without logically looking at the answer to see if it makes sense. If I have a t-score of 150, something is wrong. Okay, because the range is only 20 to 80. If I have a z-score of 12, I take a look at it. I mean, you can have a z-score of 12, but it's really out there. And so if I have the t-score 20 to 80, if I have negative numbers there in the t-score columns, I would check that. If I have negative numbers in the steinines, I would check that. If I don't have any negative numbers in the z's column, I would check that, because you can have negative numbers, and there are about as many negative as there are positive z-scores. Okay, because it depends on what the mean is. Because you're subtracting the mean, or excuse me, the raw score minus the mean divided by the standard deviation in this one. And so if my raw score is less than the mean, I'm going to have a negative number. And it's all the way down the line. So just check. Things have to make sense as you go through this. And that's part of understanding statistics, is that you just can't throw numbers in there, because they have to make sense as well. Okay, so that's kind of the upcoming chapters 5, 6, and 7, or modules, however you want to call them, or weeks. We are approaching halfway. Everybody should go, oh yeah. Usually week 9, we only got 1 week to go, and everybody goes, oh, thank God, yes. But yeah, we're approaching halfway. We're in week 5 coming up now. And you probably, from when you started, you probably didn't think you'd have this much fun, halfway through the course. But it is a learning process as we go through this. And I will open it up for whatever questions you may have. Yes, Felicia.
Well, I was wondering if when you were talking about doing the stats for those that are doing a dissertation, is it the same thing as the proposals for the capstone? Because I'm in the EDS and I noticed that a lot of people in our class is doing the EDD, but I'm doing the capstone. So does the same thing apply to the capstone? Because a lot of times I think since I'm doing most of the work for gathering all this information, I'm not really sure what the differences is between doing the dissertation versus doing the capstone. And I find myself doing the same work as people that's doing the dissertation. So why not do it you know what I'm trying to say?
Yes and kind of no, because I'm not really sure the difference myself, because I don't deal with the capstones or the ED, whatever it is. I just deal with the stat part and the research parts. Once it gets to me, that's my focus. That's why they have other people that concentrate on those. So that'd be the question probably to your advisor on that. But yeah, I mean, the stats are not going to change no matter what. Stats hasn't changed in 100 years. Only recently, and I say recently, in the mid-70s was correlation actually accepted as a statistical research method for testing for significance. So, but stats are not going to change. But I know you're going to have to do a what do they call it? The concept paper.
Right, and that's like the proposal though. I looked at the concept paper, and that reminds me of a proposal.
Barely, because a concept paper is about 12 pages, and a proposal is like 70 or something. So there's a huge difference there. Concept is, you have to look at the concept paper as more as a blueprint. This is what I'm going to do, very briefly how you're going to go through this. Your proposal is going to be very detailed on chapters 1, 2, and 3. It's all in future tense, so understand that. Do not write a proposal in past tense, okay? Because that implies it's already been done, and it can't be already been done if this is what you're going to do. So your proposal is written in future tense. Then when you finish your study and do chapters 4 and 5, it's already been done, and you go back and you change your future into past, okay? So yeah, the concept paper is a very quick blueprint of what you want to do, and that kind of gives people an idea whether it's doable or not.
Okay, thank you.
Proposal is much more involved.
Okay, thank you so much. Somebody's helping. One of the classmates is helping me now in our chat. That's good information. Thank you so much, Doctor.
Sure. What else?
Question for this model number 5, the probability. I've been reading through the whole thing, and I've been watching the videos and everything, and I understand everything. But once I get to start looking at the assignment with different examples, I struggle. Do you have any tips or advice for that? Because I understand perfectly. Once I get through the paper and everything, I totally understand it. But the problem is that I don't know what formula should I use or what to do.
Well, like I say, you have the additive law, which means that and the key word in the additive law is or. Either this or this, I don't care which. So you're going to take the individual probabilities of each one and add them together, okay? Because I don't care which one. The other key term when you get into the multiplicative law is and. This and that. And that means, that's how your lottery system is figured. It's on a multiplicative law, okay? Because it's either this number and this number. You got to have this number and this number and this number and this number. And so you take the individual probabilities of each one and you multiply them together. So that's why it's like 1 in gazillion billion that people win the lottery. I mean, you have a better chance of getting hit by lightning, bowl of 300, and score a hole in one in the same day. Okay. So, but when you get into multiplicative, and then there's the additive law of mutually unexclusive events, where you have an overlap. You have an overlap. So you have A and B, and you have an overlap. So you have the probability of A and the probability of B. Well, that overlap means it's being counted twice. So you have to subtract out that overlap. Because remember, and this is another focus point, probability goes from 0 to 1. Okay? 0 to 1, that's it. So if you have a negative number, it ain't right. If you have anything above 1, it ain't right. Okay?
Dr. Dunn?
Yes.
What Maria said is maybe a little bit different what she meant. If I may say that, Maria, I read all your papers and your instructions, and I'm a picky German, and I really follow the instructions. And then when you go to the Excel spreadsheet, and then you see the assignment, and then you see, and then you try to memorize and follow the examples in your instructions. And you know, there is actually the aha effect. You know, you have to use the knowledge, and then your Excel spreadsheets, you know, you have to interpret then what you mean. And and that's is where the challenge is. You know, I do understand and I appreciate all the papers you send and the instructions, but then when we look at the Excel spreadsheet, that's where the challenge is then to use that knowledge and apply it to the Excel spreadsheet or the Word document. Now, I see, Maria, I had the same thing this week.
Okay, so when you look at the numbers on the Excel sheet, it's in that grid, right? And you have graduate, undergraduate, and pass and fail. It'll follow the same pattern as the funky little M&M's assignment. Okay, so kind of look at that. The other thing that when you see that little slash sign in there, it's not a division sign. It means given that. So the probability of A given that B has already occurred. Okay, so you have to refer back to your M&M assignment to find out how many M&Ms do we have in with a family with no children, given that something else has occurred. Okay, so that's where that's the probability aspect of taking what that is now and applying it. And that's why I say getting it into your study group and talking this through, referring back to the M&M assignments, okay? And notice that that slash is not a dividing sign. It is A/B, which is A, given that B has already occurred, okay? So, yeah, so that's the, I want to say challenge, but that's the understanding part of how all of this works.
I got it.
Yeah, if it was easy, everybody in the country would have a doctorate, but only 2% do. So.
Okay, you keep talking about Z-scores and T-scores. What is that? What does Z stand for? What does T stand for?
T is a measure, okay? Steinine is a measure. Just are you an educator, Nicole? Okay, so you know what steinine. Steinine. So that's just a descriptor of a score that has a range of 1 to 9.
Okay.
But it's calculated. You have to get that Z-score first, and then you go through that formula and you come up with the steinine. Okay, and so how the state does this is that they have a, let's say all the 5th graders in the state of Tennessee, they have a mean. Okay, that's the mean for all the 5th graders. Now you take Johnny's score and you subtract it from the mean and divide it by the standard deviation, and that gives you the steinine, or excuse me, that gives you the Z-score. So that's a steinine is just a descriptor of used more in education. A T-score is a descriptor that's used more in business than anything else.
And I asked for that because I'm kind of like Maria, and
The German.
Ralph.
Get it, and I can put it in the Excel. I feel comfortable. But when I read the studies, I don't understand what they're trying. And people are asking me, does this, you know? And yes, this does prove or not prove. This does.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Like, okay, how does that support your theory? Because I didn't understand a word of it. That's my issue. The
Okay.
application of
Well,
it
and
doesn't make any sense to me.
well, of course, because you haven't, you're a novice. Everybody's a novice at this. And so as you start reading, and it's not going to click in one time, okay? It's not going to click the first time you read it, but you have to read it, look at it, try to apply it, go back and read it and apply it, and then slowly it starts making sense. Stats is not, as I said before, I can count on my hand minus 4 fingers the number of people that have gotten stats without any direct instruction in my lifetime. 1. And so that's what this is all about, is preparation and an understanding. So that we've had the preparation part, now we're in the understanding part, because we've used graphs, we've used, you know, different Excel, you know, processes, so you can get the use of using Excel and doing that. And people say, why don't you use SPSS? Well, SPSS is not a standard program that everybody has access to. Excel is. And you can take Excel and you can transform it into SPSS, which most people do. They'll write all their data, and they collect it and they put it in Excel, and then they'll copy and paste it into the SPSS. So this is why, you know, this is happening the way it's happening. But yeah, it's going to be confusing. I'm not going to pull any punches. It's going to be confusing. That's why I've stressed from the beginning, you get into a study group so you can talk these things through.
Yeah.
As I mentioned before, when I took stats, if it wasn't for our study group, I was sitting there, you know, probably beating my head against the wall and going back and being the superintendent. Okay. But once it clicked, it was like, oh my gosh. And the same processes, like the 7-step process that you're going to look at in chapter 7, you can use it for any statistic in a quantitative study. So, I mean, I put that together 90 or 92, I guess, when I wrote the first book.
7. I like that.
So it's just universal all the way down the line, and it keeps you in line on what you're trying to do. So all these things, yeah, it's going to be confusing. And again, I probably mentioned before, I mean, I've cleared the kitchen table off many times during my first stat course, and it was at Mississippi State, and it was twice what we're going through now. Okay, so we went what you have in applied stats, and the next one up, the quantitative methods, we had in one term. Okay, analysis, variance, t-tests. I mean, it was just like mind-boggling. Then stat 2 was using computers, and it was nested values, and it was multiple analysis of variance. And then stat 3 was, oh my gosh, it was just like regression and everything under its brother. So, so it is confusing, but you have
Dr.
to
Don?
stay focused on it and use it within your assignments and talk with your study groups. Yes.
Dr. Don, I think one of the things that would really help, and I'm not being critical, but you want us to put everything at 2 decimals, yet all the numbers that you provide are whole numbers. So, you know, you look at the 45 and the 23 and the 72, that's what they are. But when we recite the numbers back to you, then there's an expectation to have them at 45.00 and 23.00. And that's one of the things that I find sometimes is like, oh yeah, I got to go back and do that. And I understand why you do it, but there's no consistency.
Well, what numbers are you talking about?
I'm talking about like all the chart numbers, like the eggs in this week's assignment. You know, your deal was that you discovered that eggs cost from nothing to $5, and I'm being facetious, but you know, something like that. And so, but the numbers were all simply whole numbers. And yet, when we have to give the information back to you, your expectation is that everything is .xx. And so to keep everything the same, it would be nice if you represented all of the numbers that we're supposed to utilize as a decimal 2 out.
Okay, first of all, the numbers that I give you are data points. They're not final answers. The numbers that you give me are final answers. And that's what has to be rounded. I say in there, do not round the raw data points to decimal points.
And I don't. Right, okay. I don't, but I guess I'm going back to what my two colleagues whose English is not their first language, and I understand what they're saying.
Well, you have to understand too, and I put this in there, and I have to go back and check all the preview announcements, but I think virtually all the preview announcements is as round all final answers to 2 points. That's what you give me. The data points, and I say on the data sheet, do not touch the data sheet. And I get some back that have 63.00. That's not the data. You don't touch the raw data, okay? What I give you is the raw data. What you give me is the answers, and that's what's rounded to 2 decimal points. All
so I want
are rounded to 2 decimal points, not the raw data.
Okay, so then I have been wrong, because like this week's assignment, we had to put everything into order, which I understand. And so I put 12.00. I'm taking your numbers. I made them .00, so that in the end I would remember to carry it out to 2 points in the answer.
Well,
and that's wrong.
If that's how you remember it, that's fine. But you don't mess with the raw data, and that's why.
And I don't. Yeah.
So if I have a 5.26, I will put a 5.26. But usually the data that I give you are whole numbers, and they're not rounded.
Correct.
Yeah. So
that's correct.
Yes.
I would agree. They're all whole numbers.
Yeah.
But my argument is, if you want everything, .xx, then why don't you give us the same? Why don't you give us the data points with the .xx?
I don't want everything in 2 decimal points. All I want, and all it's specified, is the final answer is rounded to 2 points.
Okay.
That's it. It'll say that all final answers are rounded to 2 decimal points.
Let me ask you then let me ask you a question, because that bothers me right now. In A1 of this week's assignment, you had to calculate the average, the mean, and the n. And that needs to be shown with 2 decimals behind. That was the but not
that was in the preview.
But not the numbers which you get to the mean, or
right. And the population.
Yeah.
And the population is an answer, and it's a whole number, but I still put .00, because you say every answer has 2 decimal points, but you can't cut up a person and have less than a whole.
Every answer, not every number. Every answer, every final answer needs to be rounded to 2 decimal points if rounding rules are in effect.
Okay, but you ask us to line up numbers, and then it says A1, calculate the average and the mean and the n. I have done 2 decimals, but not the lineup.
Right.
Good. That's right. That's correct.
The lineup is not the answer.
That's correct.
Right.
That's correct. You did it right. That's it.
It just says align the numbers. And that's all you're doing, is aligning the numbers. But when you calculate the mean, that's a final answer. When you calculate the standard deviation, that's a final answer. When you calculate the sum of x minus the mean should equal 0, that's a final answer.
Right.
So
Okay.
the numbers are not, the numbers are not final answers. It just says align them, and that's to determine the medium. It's when you determine the median, you're going to rank them from high to low on that.
What I learned is, Dr. Dunn, is really follow instructions.
Yeah. He
I
said
mean-
that. That's what he said. He said that.
It's,
And-
you know,
And we're
I have
both being
already-
too anal.
I have already a nightmare not
Well,
to follow.
I don't know if it's about being too anal, but it's the statistics definitely forces people to overthink way too much
Mhm.
and just and look at what is being said. And that's the whole point of 5, 6, and 7. All this is preparation. And I know that in the several of the assignments do not, when you have to use a data set and you're transposing it, do not add, round them up. Do not mess with the raw data.
Right.
That's the raw data
Right.
on there. All you're looking at that's rounded is the 2 decimal points. And that's what you give me. I don't give you the final answer, so I don't round anything in that sense. Unless I give you a decimal, then I'll round it to 2 decimal points. But, in most cases. But the final answer is what you're giving me. That's what needs to be rounded into 2 decimal points.
Well, our study group, we're doing it right there. Looks like we're doing it right.
So who is not in the study group right now?
I am with Felicia and Michael and who else? Because the other person I didn't interact with her.
Yeah, because they don't come in that often. Only when they have a question.
Oh, okay.
You can use this. If you're not in a study group, you can ask somebody. I mean, I'll let you talk back and forth if you're not in a study group and say, can I get into a study group? That's the other, value of having a Zoom conference.
No, we do pretty good. Our study group, we do pretty good. We're on the right track. We're getting it right.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah, Maria, we're doing good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when
Michael's
you have a study group of 5 or 6, you have 5 or 6 people reading what is expected. And that's the big thing, not what you think, but what is expected.
That is correct. And it's working. It works like a charm.
And I say stats is a totally different world. You can't treat it like, and I said at the beginning of the course, you can't treat it like any other course because it's a totally different mindset. And there are certain, it's not accurate, but it's precise. And the precision is following the directions and following the steps that follow down. Because when you actually calculate numbers in your proposal for your dissertation and everything, when you're crunching numbers, you have to be very precise on what you're doing in order to come up with the most accurate conclusion, because you'll find out type 1, type 2 error. You may reject the null hypothesis saying that there is a difference when in reality there isn't a difference because you didn't follow the precision of formulas and follow the precision of setting things up. So, it's not accurate in the sense that you're dealing with an alpha level, so you're going to be as close as possible with that. But that's why I say if you got a 5% chance of making an incorrect conclusion based on stuff, then it can't be totally accurate, and that's why it doesn't prove anything. So.
Okay.
So does anybody want to talk to anybody about being in the study group? No, everybody's pretty good.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
For the assignments today, somebody was saying to put the Excel and do you need the Excel spreadsheet things done in PDF, or is it okay with just Excel?
Let me turn your volume up because I can barely hear. Okay, say it again, please.
Would you like our Excel spreadsheets to be converted to PDF, or is it good with just Excel?
And the assignments that are the preview and the check sheet, if you're comfortable with the Excel uploading the way it is without losing stuff in the process of uploading, then use the Excel. I always is like the graphs and everything. I always like put something on PDF because it loses something. Sometimes when you upload it, it throws something off. So
Okay.
that's always my recommendation. But if you feel comfortable that the Excel is going to upload without any alterating of, I can't even get the word out, with any modification of the data in your upload, then use the Excel
Okay.
or use the Word, whichever one it is. So.
Mom, when you say, Dr. Don, when you say that rounding rules are in effect, that's on both, if there's 2 assignments, the Word, and that's on the Excel document, correct?
If I don't specify it, yes, it's on both. But I think in this one, I think I specified that it's the Excel only, I think.
Okay, got it.
It's what, and it also tells you to rounding rules, and it also says pay attention to the template because in one question it'll tell you to round to 4 decimal points, and
Yep.
there's a reason for that.
I saw
Okay.
that.
Okay, and there's a reason for that because in that probability question, it's going to, if you don't round it to 4, you're going to have 2 that are going to have identical numbers, and that can't happen the way it is. Okay.
Okay, I got it. I got it.
But they're different assignments, isn't it, Dr. Dunn? I do not recall. We have different assignments on the group.
Are you, see, Felicia, you're talking about chapter 5, right? Or somebody told me
Well,
about
chapter 4.
chapter 4. You're going to have a Word and you're going to have an Excel.
Yep. Okay. Just
And they're all the same. They're all the same.
The Word is different. The Excel has 2 parts to it.
Yes.
So please make sure there's a sheet 1 and a sheet 2.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Sheet 1 has data points 1 through 15.
Mm-hmm.
Sheet 2 has data points 16 through 30.
Yeah,
So
I got it.
basically, you're doing the same thing as you did in week 1, although now you're only using 15 data points instead of the 30.
Yeah.
And that's only a review to make sure that you go through the process again. The Word document has the different calculations for group data.
I got it. I did it right.
Okay.
Dr. Dunn, I put for model 4, I put everything in Word. Is that fine? I put everything, the Excel, both parts, and also the Word document. Is that correct, or you want it differently?
If the Word document is as I put in a lot of these, if it's parallel to what the Excel is, that's fine.
Okay.
So some people, when they make their own little thing up in Word, they just, there's numbers all over the place and I can't find anything. So that's why I say if you're not going to use a template, then use something that's parallel. So if you're going to use Word, then just copy it like it is in Excel and put it on the Word document. So it's the same thing.
Hi, Dr. Don.
Yes.
Hi, I have a question. I'm Linnea from New Jersey. Hi, everybody.
Good.
Jersey.
I have a quick question. I know that we really haven't been expected to show our work up to this point, but is there going to be some kind of an exam situation where that's going to be necessary?
No, you'll never need to show your work. And even on the final exam, there are going to be calculations, but everything is multiple choice. So when you calculate a Z-score or T-score, it's how you ever do it, but you're going to pick whatever answer you come up with on the final exam because everything's multiple choice.
Okay.
So, but you will have to calculate, but you don't have to show it.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
So you don't look at our formulas when we put the formulas in the Excel box. You just look at our final numbers. You don't see if we calculated the formulas or not.
If you go to the Excel, like on week number 7 or week number 6 rather, yeah, I'll look and see if the formula is correct.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, for the others, there's really no formula in there. You just hit the mean.
Right. I got it.
Click on the box and you scroll it down. Hit the equal sign or F equals and choose the mean and highlight the numbers and there it is.
Okay.
And you should have it. You should have it set Excel set for rounding to 2 decimal points.
I do. Okay, no problem.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
I think someone sent me a thing today that said, or yesterday it says, can you preview this? And I usually don't preview pre-grade assignments because number one, I don't have enough time. Number two, it's not fair to everybody. But the only thing I mentioned in there is that you need to go back and take a look at what your final answers are, because a lot of them were not rounded.
Gotcha. Okay, good.
Okay. And people are going, why is this rounding so important? Because you're going to have to round if you're doing a qualitative or quantitative study, you're going to have to round the numbers, your final answer, all the way through in your tables and everything. Because if you use all your numbers, you're not going to have, that's just not part of the process. So when you get done, you use all your numbers in the calculations, you round your final answer, and that's what you're going to be using to determine whether what your critical value is going to be. And whether and whether your final answer is going to be significant or non-significant based on your observed value versus the critical value.
Mm-hmm. How about that final exam? Is it timed or?
Yeah, I'll go into that, briefly. I'll do that also in week 8. Your benchmark exam they're both not timed to a point. Well, I think the benchmark you have a certain amount of time to do it. I think like 4 hours, 5 hours, something like that. You get 3 chances to do the benchmark, to get 80%, and it covers your first research course in the first 9 weeks of this course. But it does not affect your final grade. You will have to pass it at some point. If you don't pass it in the 3 times in this class, you just sign up for a benchmark class and you take it until you do pass it. But there will be a certificate, and I'll go into that in week 8. Your final exam, you have 1 shot. You could, as long as you make some move before 15 minutes, you can take it for 3 days if you want to, 5 days. But if you do not do anything for 15 minutes, it shuts down and calculates the score that you have at that particular point. So if you only got half of it done, then that's your final exam, and I can't reset it for you to retake it. So there's no time limit to it, but you have to make some move every 15, before 15 minutes, because after 15 minutes, it shuts down and records the score that you have right there.
The benchmark is due when?
They're all due week 10.
And that's 3 altogether?
What? 3 what?
2 tests? 2 tests?
No. If you get 80% the first test, you don't have to retake it.
Okay.
That's only, you have 3 chances only if you don't get 80% on the benchmark.
It's only 1 final exam.
1 final exam and 1 shot.
Okay, gotcha.
And it covers everything that we've talked about all the way through the course. I think there's 35 questions, I think, maybe. So I will go back here probably usually in week 7 or 8. I go back and I'll take it to make sure that it's doing what it's supposed to do.
You take the test?
Oh, yeah. I take tests in each of the classes to make sure that it scores like it's supposed to score.
And let me say this, Dr. Dunn, if we follow your instructions week by week and do the exercise and submit our work, we should be able to do it. Am I right? I mean, I have some confidence in myself that I practice and I try to understand. I'm not sure I understand everything all the time, but I follow your exercise, your examples. I learn from it, apply it to the homework. And I feel confident that with this guidance, we should be able to get.
I can tell you, last term I had, I think it's 440 points total. I think something like that, 420, 440. I had one person get it absolutely correct. I had several people miss one, but then on the other hand, I had people who, for whatever reason, didn't follow the instructions, didn't follow the guidelines, and they would get like 150, 160. I had several below 200, and you could tell they're struggling all the way through the term, and they keep saying, well, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And I said, no, I mean, it is what it is. This is not math 101. Okay. And I can't give you the answers. That's why you have study groups. You know, this is an understanding aspect of it. This is something that at the doctoral level, there is a certain measure where students have accountability to do some certain things. And I try to provide, I can tell you the first time I taught this course, I did not have any announcements like they are now. I didn't have any preview announcements like they had, and I didn't have a checklist.
Oh, I appreciate
portfolio. And I didn't have any of this stuff.
I appreciate it.
And students still did very well. I mean, you can look back at the grade, you know, I post the grades, you know, that I've had since day one. But there was a lot of anxiety, you know, going through this. And so each term I've done something a little bit differently and added something to it. And, you know, try to make it, you know, a little less taxing, but I'm at a point where I can't go any further unless I start showing you how to do it. And
Right.
that just, that's just, you know, the PowerPoints and the chapters, the hard copy chapters, you know, puts it in perspective. But it gets to a point where I can't tell you certain things without giving you the answer. And it, you know, people go, well, you know, someone look at it and go, well, that's not helpful. And I can't tell you without giving you the answer. And it's like that F equal 4. I can't tell you how to do it without giving you the answer. But the answer is in the checklist, and the answer is in the preview announcement. So it's
I mean, Dr. Dunn, no doubt, the support you give us is superb. And if we follow your papers you send us, we learn from it. I think it's outstanding what we get, and I have confidence that we all will pass. I really, with this support, we should be able to pass, in my opinion.
Well, and I look at the grades. I mean, the grades are really, really good. And it's now you have to heighten your level of focus. You all know more than you think you know, but when you get into the overthinking, that's when the trouble hits. Should I do this? If the assignment doesn't tell you to round, then don't round. If the assignment tells you don't touch the raw data, then don't touch the raw data. Okay. If the assignment tells you not to rank the raw data, then don't rank it. And I've had people do that before. I said, you don't touch the raw data. Okay. The raw data is there for a reason. And, you know, when you get into chapter 7 or chapter 6, it's going to tell you you're going to have 30 Z-scores. You're going to have 30 T-scores. You're going to have 30 Stanine scores. And inevitably, I'll get 2 or 3 that will give me 15 because there's repeats. I said, I don't care if they're repeats. You have 30 data points. And if you have a repeat, because you're going to have a height of 66, and maybe there 3 times. You're going to have the same Z-score and the same T-score and the same Stanine score 3 times. But you'll have 30 data points for each one, not 15, not 20, not 29. And, you know, it's very specific on how you do that. And if you don't read the preview announcement in detail, and I go over it each time I post it, and hopefully, you know, I find something that, hopefully I don't find something that leads astray, but if there is, then I'll hopefully correct it, you know, and before I post it. And so those are things, I take a lot of time in putting these things up with the information that's on there. So it's not trying to be not misleading, but then in the same breath, I can't tell you everything that's on there. Otherwise, you know, I'll do it
Understood.
So, but y'all are doing well. There are some that are still overthinking a little bit too much, and that's where you just have to get in the study group and just start talking and hashing these things out, which makes it a whole lot easier.
Do you know anything about graduation? About the requirements for graduation?
You have to have a successfully signed and completed dissertation.
No, I'm doing the. I'm doing the EDS.
Oh, EDS. I have no clue. No, I don't.
Okay, because if I don't pass this class, then I don't get in the graduating line on July 27th. I
Well-
will be in my concept and capstone at the same time. I think they said before September 29th, 22nd.
What are you talking about passing? You talking about a C or a D or an F or?
No,
what?
I'm getting an A. I get A's.
Okay, well, then you shouldn't have to worry about it. You're doing fine. Don't worry about things that are out of your control.
So I have to get in that graduation line. I'm already set. This is it for me. This is my last class before I'm completely go into my capstone. And they said that I can be in my capstone and get in that graduation line if I'm going for EDS.
Okay, then I would heighten your focus for the next 5 weeks.
Absolutely. This is it. I'm done with ACE. I am done with ACE. This is it.
Okay, good deal. Well, heighten your focus and you'll do.
Don't worry, I'm ready.
Okay, you're in a good study group, so you'll do well.
Okay.
You're all doing well. I mean, some are doing weller than others, but it's whatever it is. And so, you've got to, keep pushing yourself to, to understand. It doesn't do any good to have to go through stats and somebody asks you what's the difference between a dependent and independent t-test, and you sit there and you go, oh, because that's not what the degree is about. Okay. So, all right. Anything else?
No, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Well, have a great week.
You too.
Bye.
All right.
Bye. Bye, Rose. Bye, Leslie.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye,
Maria.
everyone.
Bye,
Bye,
Rose.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Nice to see faces. Bye, New Jersey.